I stood in the glass-walled boardroom at Meridian Tech Solutions, watching CEO Brad Sullivan's face turn crimson as I presented my data analysis. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the shocked expressions of my colleagues seated around the mahogany conference table. I had just finished explaining why his decision to rush our untested software update could crash client systems across 3 major accounts, potentially costing millions in damages and destroying years of trust. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Brad gripped his leather portfolio, his knuckles whitening with barely controlled rage. Then he stood up, slowly, pointed one manicured finger toward the door, and announced loud enough for the entire 20th floor to hear through those transparent walls that had always made privacy impossible. "Clean up your desk, Jordyn. You're done here." The weight of 20 pairs of eyes followed me as I calmly gathered my presentation materials and tucked them into my burgundy briefcase. "Thank you for the opportunity to work here," I replied with as much dignity as I could summon, then walked past the stunned executives toward the door. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor as whispers erupted behind me, but I kept my shoulders straight and my pace steady until I reached the elevator bank. Standing there waiting for the doors to open, I reflected on the 5 years I had spent building Meridian's flagship product, Connect Flow, from a rough concept sketched on a coffee-stained napkin into the market-leading client management platform that generated 60% of our revenue. When I joined the company as a junior developer fresh out of Stanford with my computer science degree, the former CEO, Patricia Holloway, had taken me under her wing like a protective mentor guiding a promising apprentice. Patricia understood innovation in ways that transcended typical corporate thinking. She encouraged my unconventional approaches to database architecture and gave me freedom to experiment with algorithms that other companies dismissed as too risky or complex. Under her leadership, I developed the revolutionary data processing system that became ConnectFlow's core competitive advantage, allowing businesses to manage customer relationships with unprecedented efficiency and insight. Those early days felt electric with possibility. Patricia and I would spend hours in her corner office windows overlooking the bustling San Francisco Bay, discussing the future of enterprise software and how technology could genuinely improve people's working lives. She promised that when she eventually retired, I would be positioned to lead the entire product division, bringing fresh vision to an industry often stuck in outdated paradigms. Everything changed 6 months ago when Patricia announced her retirement and Brad Sullivan acquired controlling interest in the company through his investment firm. Where Patricia had fostered collaboration and creativity, Brad imposed rigid hierarchies and aggressive timelines that prioritized short-term profits over sustainable growth or employee well-being. As the elevator descended toward the parking garage, I tried to process what had just occurred. My termination felt surreal, disconnected from any rational business decision. I had questioned problematic strategies before without facing such extreme retaliation, and my track record spoke for itself in terms of successful product launches and client satisfaction scores. The underground garage felt cold and dimly lit compared to the bright office spaces above. I was fumbling for my car keys when Marcus Williams, the head of building security, approached me with an expression of genuine concern creasing his weathered face. Marcus had become a friend over the years, often chatting about his daughter's college applications while I worked late nights debugging code or preparing presentations. "Jordyn, I need to tell you something," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure we were alone among the concrete pillars and parked vehicles. "What happened up there wasn't random. Brad's been meeting with someone regularly over the past month, and I think you deserve to know who." My stomach dropped as Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me security footage from the executive floor. The timestamp indicated these meetings had occurred during lunch hours, when most employees were away from their desks. In the grainy black and white video, I watched my ex-husband Derek Palmer entering Brad's office carrying manila folders and what appeared to be a laptop computer. Derek and I had divorced 2 years earlier after discovering his pattern of lying about finances and his inability to commit to our relationship or our daughter Emma. The separation had been contentious, with Derek repeatedly attempting to undermine my career advancement by claiming I prioritized work over family responsibilities. Seeing him in Brad's office felt like a betrayal that cut deeper than any professional disappointment. "There's more," Marcus continued, scrolling to additional footage. "He's been here at least 6 times that I know of, always when you're in client meetings or working off-site. Yesterday, I overheard part of their conversation when I was checking the executive floor's security systems. Derek was telling Brad about your work habits, your personal vulnerabilities, even details about your home life that he shouldn't be sharing with anyone. The pieces began falling into place with horrifying clarity. Brad hadn't fired me for questioning his dangerous update timeline. This had been a calculated personal vendetta orchestrated by Derek, who knew exactly which buttons to push to make me appear insubordinate or difficult to work with. My ex-husband had weaponized my dedication to quality and client safety, turning my professional integrity into grounds for termination. Marcus showed me one final piece of evidence that made my blood run cold. Derek had been accessing my laptop remotely through our old shared cloud storage account, which I had forgotten to deactivate after our divorce. Every document I had worked on, every email I had sent, every strategic plan I had developed for ConnectFlow's future enhancement had been visible to him for months. As I drove home through the heavy Friday afternoon traffic, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, I realized this wasn't just about losing my job. Derek had systematically invaded my professional life, stolen my intellectual property, and collaborated with Brad to destroy the career I had spent years building. The question that haunted me as I pulled into my driveway was simple but terrifying. What else had they planned? I sat in my Honda Accord in the driveway for 20 minutes, unable to face going inside my empty house. Emma was spending the weekend with Derek as part of our custody arrangement, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that my professional life had been systematically dismantled by the 2 men who were supposed to protect my interests. Finally, I forced myself to walk up the brick pathway to my front door and immediately called my best friend Sarah Chen, a cybersecurity expert who worked for a boutique digital forensics firm in Palo Alto. Sarah had helped me through the divorce proceedings by ensuring Derek couldn't access my personal devices or financial accounts, but apparently we had missed something crucial. "Bring your laptop, your work phone, and any tablets you use for business," Sarah instructed when I explained what Marcus had discovered. "I'll meet you at my office in an hour. We need to see exactly how deep this goes before they have time to cover their tracks." Sarah's office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse filled with multiple computer monitors, specialized scanning equipment, and servers humming quietly in climate-controlled cases. She had built her reputation helping companies investigate data breaches and intellectual property theft, making her the perfect person to uncover the full scope of Derek's infiltration into my professional life. Within 30 minutes of connecting my devices to her analysis tools, Sarah's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "This is much worse than we thought," she said, pointing to streams of data flowing across her screens. "Derek hasn't just been passively monitoring your work. He's been actively copying files, forwarding emails to external accounts, and downloading proprietary source code for at least 18 months. The evidence was overwhelming and infuriating. Derek had stolen 3 of my major innovations, including the predictive analytics module that had revolutionized how ConnectFlow processed customer behavior patterns. He had already presented these algorithms to Apex Dynamics Meridian's primary competitor, claiming them as his own original development work. But Sarah's investigation revealed something even more disturbing. She discovered email chains between Brad and Derek dating back months, showing their collaboration wasn't limited to gathering information about my alleged disloyalty or security risks. Brad had been paying Derek as a consultant to identify vulnerable employees who might threaten his authority or question his increasingly questionable business practices. "Look at this," Sarah said, opening an encrypted folder hidden in Derek's communications. "Brad hired your ex-husband specifically to build a case for your termination. They've been planning this for weeks, documenting every instance where you expressed concerns about product quality, client satisfaction, or ethical business practices." The conspiracy extended beyond my firing. As Sarah dug deeper into the digital evidence, she uncovered financial records showing Brad had been selling ConnectFlow's source code to overseas shell companies, essentially licensing Meridian's intellectual property to unauthorized third parties for personal profit. Derek's role was to distract attention from Brad's embezzlement by targeting me as a scapegoat for any security breaches or ethical violations. My stomach churned as I realized the full implications. I hadn't stumbled onto Brad's criminal operation by accident when I questioned his rushed software update. He wasn't being reckless or incompetent. He was deliberately creating chaos and system vulnerabilities to cover massive financial transfers and intellectual property theft. My termination wasn't punishment for insubordination. It was elimination of a witness who had gotten too close to discovering his crimes. "We need professional help," Sarah said grimly, printing copies of the most damaging evidence. "This isn't just workplace retaliation anymore. We're looking at federal crimes involving computer fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." As if summoned by Providence, my neighbor Helen Rodriguez knocked on Sarah's office door just as we were discussing our next steps. Helen, a retired FBI financial crimes investigator who lived in the house next to mine, had driven over after I texted her asking for advice about potential legal options following my termination. Helen examined the evidence with the methodical precision of someone who had spent 25 years building cases against white-collar criminals. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her sharp brown eyes missed nothing as she reviewed Derek's stolen files and Brad's suspicious financial transactions. "I've seen this pattern before," Helen said, setting down the printed emails with evident disgust. "Corporate executives use personal conflicts and family disputes to cover large-scale theft because investigators typically focus on the obvious drama instead of following the money trail. Brad's operation shows sophisticated planning and international connections that suggest this isn't his first time running this type of scheme." The scope of the criminal enterprise was staggering. Helen identified at least 15 separate instances where Brad had sold proprietary technology developed by Meridian employees, generating millions in unreported income while weakening the company's competitive position. Derek's payments were just a small part of a much larger operation designed to systematically strip valuable intellectual property from the company Patricia Holloway had spent decades building. "Here's what's going to happen next," Helen warned as we prepared to leave Sarah's office. "Brad knows you're smart enough to eventually piece this together, especially with Marcus Williams feeding you inside information. He'll try to frame you for the theft before you can expose him. Expect accusations of corporate espionage violations, of confidentiality agreements, and attempts to destroy your professional reputation throughout the industry." Driving home through the darkening streets of Silicon Valley, I felt simultaneously devastated and furious. The career I had built through years of hard work and innovation was being destroyed, not because of my performance or dedication, but because I had unknowingly threatened the livelihood of criminals who saw my integrity as an obstacle to their theft. As I pulled into my garage, my phone buzzed with a text message that confirmed Helen's prediction. My attorney had received a formal notice that Meridian's legal team would be filing charges against me Monday morning for allegedly stealing trade secrets and violating non-compete agreements. The war was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with a certified letter from Meridian's law firm delivered by a grim-faced postal worker who required my signature on multiple documents. The thick legal envelope contained accusations that made my coffee taste bitter and my hands shake with rage as I read each carefully crafted lie designed to destroy my reputation and career. According to the formal complaint, I had allegedly copied proprietary algorithms from company servers in the weeks leading up to my termination, violating confidentiality agreements and stealing trade secrets worth millions of dollars. The document claimed I had been secretly negotiating with competitor firms while still employed at Meridian, using insider knowledge to gain unfair advantage in job interviews and business proposals. Every accusation was technically possible to prove or disprove, creating exactly the type of legal gray area that could drag through courts for years while destroying my ability to find work in the technology industry. Brad's lawyers had crafted their attack with surgical precision, knowing that even unfounded allegations of corporate espionage would make me unemployable regardless of the ultimate legal outcome. My phone rang before I could finish reading the complete legal filing. Katie Bennett, my former assistant who had worked closely with me for 3 years developing ConnectFlow's user interface, was crying so hard I could barely understand her words through the connection. "I'm so sorry, Jordyn," she sobbed into the phone. "Brad called me into his office Friday afternoon after you left and made me sign a statement saying you had been acting suspiciously in your final weeks. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would fire me and make sure I never worked in tech again. I have student loans and my mother's medical bills to pay. I couldn't afford to lose my job." Katie's forced testimony provided crucial evidence for Brad's false narrative. Her statement claimed I had been copying files to external drives, staying late to access systems without supervision, and asking unusual questions about financial procedures and client contract details. None of it was true, but Katie's signature on official company letterhead gave Brad's accusations the appearance of credibility from a trusted witness. The systematic destruction of my professional reputation had already begun spreading through industry networks. Former colleagues started receiving confidential emails warning them against hiring me, describing me as a disgruntled employee who had stolen proprietary information after being terminated for insubordination. The Whisper campaign was remarkably effective, leveraging Silicon Valley's tight-knit professional community against me. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 potential employers who had previously expressed interest in my background suddenly stopped returning my calls. A headhunter who had been actively promoting my candidacy for senior positions at other tech companies left an uncomfortable voicemail explaining that her clients were no longer interested in my profile due to recent developments in my professional situation. The personal attack came Wednesday morning with a phone call that shattered what remained of my emotional stability. Derek had filed for emergency custody of Emma, claiming I was mentally unstable due to my job loss and potentially dangerous to our daughter's well-being. His legal filing painted me as an unfit mother who prioritized career advancement over parental responsibilities, using doctored text messages and manipulated photographs as evidence of my alleged erratic behavior. The custody documents included conversations that never occurred, emails I had never sent, and witness statements from people I had never met. Derek had constructed an entirely false narrative about my mental health, financial stability, and parenting abilities, designed to take Emma away from me at the moment when I needed her support most desperately. Thursday brought even more devastating news. My landlord, Mr. Peterson, called to inform me that my lease would be terminated immediately due to an anonymous tip, claiming I was involved in corporate espionage and posed a security risk to other tenants in the building. He had received detailed information about the legal charges against me, along with suggestions that law enforcement might need to search my apartment or question my neighbors about suspicious activities. Friday morning, I discovered that my bank accounts had been frozen pending an investigation into suspicious financial activity. The freeze blocked access to my savings checking account, and even Emma's college fund, leaving me unable to pay for legal representation daily expenses or the emergency custody battle that would determine my daughter's future. Standing in my kitchen with final notices scattered across the granite countertop, I realized Brad and Derek had orchestrated a comprehensive campaign designed to destroy every aspect of my life simultaneously. They weren't just trying to discredit my professional reputation or cover up their crimes. They were systematically eliminating my ability to fight back by attacking my finances, housing, parental rights, and legal options. The true cruelty of their strategy became clear when Emma called that evening crying into the phone from Derek's apartment. "Daddy says you're a bad person who steals things from work," she whispered between sobs. "He says that's why you got fired and why you can't take care of me anymore." "Is it true, Mommy?" Hearing my 7-year-old daughter repeat Derek's lies about my character was the most devastating moment of the entire ordeal. They weren't just trying to destroy my career or reputation. They were poisoning my relationship with Emma, turning her against me using fears and confusion that no child should have to experience. But as I sat on my living room floor that night, surrounded by legal documents and unpaid bills, something inside me began to shift from despair toward determination. Helen Rodriguez had warned me this attack would come, and she had also promised to help me fight back using her FBI contacts and investigative experience. Sarah Chen had copies of all the evidence proving Derek's theft and Brad's embezzlement safely stored on encrypted servers that were beyond their reach. Marcus Williams was still feeding us inside information about Brad's activities, and Katie Bennett's forced cooperation could potentially be reversed if we could offer her protection from retaliation. For the first time since my public humiliation in that boardroom, I began to believe that fighting back might be possible. Brad and Derek had underestimated me by assuming I would simply accept defeat and disappear quietly. They were about to discover that destroying someone's life only makes them more dangerous, not less. Emma's tears over the phone that night became the catalyst that transformed my despair into cold determination. No matter what Brad and Derek had done to my career, finances, or reputation, I refused to let them poison my daughter's perception of who I was as a person and a mother. They had crossed a line that demanded retaliation, not retreat. Saturday morning, I called Helen Rodriguez and asked her to assemble everyone who might be willing to help me fight back. Within 2 hours, my living room had become an impromptu war room, with Helen coordinating strategy, Sarah analyzing digital evidence, Marcus providing inside intelligence from Meridian, and even Katie Bennett arriving secretly to offer her cooperation in exposing the truth. Katie looked exhausted and frightened, but her guilt over being forced to lie about me had overcome her fear of Brad's retaliation. "He made me sign that statement by threatening to destroy my career," she confessed, sitting nervously on the edge of my sofa. "But I kept copies of everything he asked me to fabricate, including emails he dictated for me to send to other employees warning them about your alleged suspicious behavior." Helen established secure communication protocols to prevent Brad's surveillance of our planning sessions. She provided encrypted phones, temporary email accounts, and meeting locations that couldn't be monitored by corporate security or private investigators. Her FBI background proved invaluable in understanding how to build a case that would stand up in court while protecting everyone involved from further retaliation. Sarah's forensic analysis had uncovered even more damaging evidence against Brad and Derek. Beyond the intellectual property theft and financial fraud, she discovered that Brad had used this same strategy against two other senior employees in the past year. Both had left the technology industry entirely after being falsely accused of corporate espionage, their careers destroyed, and reputations ruined by similar smear campaigns. "This isn't just about you anymore," Sarah explained, showing us patterns of behavior that revealed a systematic approach to eliminating threats to Brad's criminal operation. "He's been using personal conflicts and family disputes to cover major theft for at least 3 years. We need to expose the entire scheme to prevent him from destroying more lives." The breakthrough came when Marcus revealed that Brad had been growing increasingly paranoid about potential FBI investigation into his overseas financial transactions. Several major clients had begun asking uncomfortable questions about ConnectFlow's security protocols and licensing agreements, making Brad desperate to eliminate anyone who might cooperate with law enforcement inquiries. That desperation created the opportunity we needed. Helen suggested we could use Brad's paranoia against him by forcing him to reveal the full scope of his criminal activities while being recorded by law enforcement. The plan would require careful timing and significant personal risk, but it offered the best chance to clear my name while ensuring both Brad and Derek faced consequences for their actions. Tuesday afternoon, Victoria Jiang, the CEO of Apex Dynamics, called my personal phone directly. I expected another rejection based on the industry whisper campaign about my alleged theft of trade secrets. But Victoria's first words surprised me completely. "I need to meet with you as soon as possible," she said without any preliminary small talk. "Derek Palmer approached us last week trying to sell algorithms he claimed were his original work, but I immediately recognized them as developments from your published research papers. Instead of accepting his proposal, I've been investigating where he obtained technology that clearly belongs to you." Victoria's call represented an unexpected reversal that could change everything. Apex Dynamics was Meridian's primary competitor with resources and industry connections that could validate my innocence while exposing Derek's theft. More importantly, Victoria had been tracking Brad's illegal activities independently, gathering evidence that corroborated everything Sarah had discovered through her forensic investigation. We met that evening at a discreet restaurant in Menlo Park, where Victoria outlined an offer that seemed too good to be true. Apex wanted to hire me as Chief Innovation Officer with a signing bonus large enough to cover legal fees, housing costs, and the emergency custody battle for Emma. The position would also provide platform to rebuild my reputation while leading development of next-generation client management systems. But Victoria's proposal went beyond simple employment. She revealed that Apex had been tracking Meridian's illegal code licensing to overseas companies for months, working with federal investigators to build a comprehensive case against Brad's criminal enterprise. Multiple technology companies had reported similar patterns of intellectual property theft, creating a multi-jurisdictional investigation that was preparing to move toward arrests and indictments. "We want you to help us catch them in the act," Victoria explained over dinner. "Brad is getting desperate because he knows investigators are closing in. If you agree to participate in a controlled operation, we can record him confessing to the theft while trying to negotiate your silence. Combined with the financial evidence and Derek's attempted sale of stolen algorithms, we'll have everything needed to put them both in prison. The sting operation would require me to pretend I was willing to accept Brad's legal settlement in exchange for signing comprehensive non-disclosure agreements. Victoria's security team would provide recording equipment, and Helen's FBI contacts would ensure the evidence would be admissible in court. The personal risk was significant, but the potential rewards included complete vindication, financial security, and justice for everyone Brad had victimized. Friday morning, Brad's attorney called to schedule a meeting for the following week to discuss resolution options that would benefit everyone involved. The tone was conciliatory, designed to make me believe that accepting their settlement offer was my only realistic option to avoid years of expensive litigation with uncertain outcomes. What Brad didn't know was that his attempt to silence me would become the moment when his entire criminal operation collapsed. Helen had positioned FBI financial crimes investigators to monitor the meetings. Sarah had prepared digital evidence that would support the recorded confession, and Victoria had assembled legal resources to ensure my protection throughout the process. As I prepared for what would likely be the most important conversation of my professional life, Emma called from Derek's apartment to say goodnight. "I miss you, Mommy," she whispered into the phone. "When can I come home?" "Very soon, sweetheart." I promised, knowing that within days I would either have my life back completely or face even more devastating retaliation from men who had already proven they would stop at nothing to protect their crimes. The war was reaching its climax, and everything I cared about hung in the balance. The restaurant Brad chose for our meeting perfectly reflected his arrogance and sense of superiority. Le Bernardin was an exclusive establishment in downtown San Francisco where tech executives conducted deals worth millions while dining on $40 entrees and discussing the future of Silicon Valley. Brad had reserved a corner table that provided privacy while allowing him to see everyone who entered or left the dining room. I arrived 15 minutes early wearing the small recording device Victoria's security team had provided, along with professional attire that projected confidence despite my internal nervousness. Helen Rodriguez was positioned at the bar with FBI surveillance equipment, while Sarah monitored digital communications from a van outside the restaurant. The operation represented months of careful planning compressed into a single crucial conversation. Brad entered precisely on time, dressed in his signature navy suit with gold cufflinks that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His smile carried the smug satisfaction of someone who believed he had completely destroyed his opponent and was now magnanimously offering terms for surrender.
"You look well considering everything you've been dealing with,"
he said, settling into the leather banquette across from me. "I hope you've had time to reflect on how we might resolve this situation in a way that protects everyone's interests." The opening pleasantries lasted only minutes before Brad began outlining his proposed settlement. He offered to drop all legal charges against me in exchange for signing comprehensive non-disclosure agreements that would prevent me from discussing my employment at Meridian, the circumstances of my termination, or any knowledge I might have gained about the company's business practices and client relationships.
"This is really the best outcome you can hope for,"
he continued, signaling the waiter for another glass of wine. "Fighting these charges would cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees, destroy what's left of your reputation in the industry, and probably result in criminal prosecution for theft of trade secrets. I'm offering you a chance to walk away cleanly and start over somewhere else." As Brad grew more comfortable and confident, the recording device captured him revealing details about his systematic approach to eliminating threats to his operation. He boasted about how easily he had manipulated Derek's jealousy and resentment to destroy my credibility using personal conflicts to cover his theft of intellectual property and embezzlement of company resources.
"Derek made it simple,"
Brad laughed, cutting into his salmon with obvious satisfaction.
"He provided everything I needed to know about your work habits, your weaknesses, your financial pressures.
Once I understood how to push your buttons, getting you to appear insubordinate and unreliable was just a matter of creating the right scenarios." The confession grew more damaging as Brad revealed his long-term strategy of selling ConnectFlow's source code and client data to international competitors. He admitted to generating millions in unreported income while systematically weakening Meridian's market position, using the chaos of employee terminations to cover the trail of stolen intellectual property.
Patricia Holloway built something valuable, but she never understood how to monetize it properly," he said with obvious contempt for his predecessor. "I've been extracting maximum value from her innovations while preparing to move operations offshore, where oversight is more flexible."
Just as Brad was describing his plans to liquidate Meridian's most valuable assets, Derek Palmer burst through the restaurant's front entrance, clearly intoxicated and visibly agitated. His unexpected arrival created exactly the type of chaos that Helen had predicted might occur when co-conspirators began to panic under pressure.
"You lying piece of garbage!"
Derek shouted, stumbling toward our table while other diners stared in shock.
"You promised me $200,000 for helping destroy Jordyn's career, and now you're trying to cut me out of the deal."
Brad's face went white as Derek's drunken accusations echoed through the elegant dining room. Restaurant security moved toward the disturbance, but Derek was already revealing details about their collaboration that confirmed everything the FBI needed to hear through our recording equipment.
"I recorded our conversations, you know,"
Derek slurred, pulling out his phone with trembling hands.
"Every meeting where you told me how to steal her files, every plan to frame her for your theft, every payment you made to keep me quiet about your overseas accounts. I've got insurance against people like you."
The situation deteriorated rapidly as both men began threatening each other with exposure, while I sat silently between them, recording every word of their mutual destruction. Brad offered to frame Derek for the entire operation, while Derek threatened to provide evidence to law enforcement about Brad's systematic theft from multiple employees over several years. Their panic revealed the full scope of criminal activities that went far beyond what we had originally suspected. Brad had been selling proprietary technology developed by dozens of Meridian employees, creating shell companies to hide the financial transactions, and using personal conflicts to eliminate anyone who might expose his operation. Derek's insurance policy included recordings of Brad discussing plans to expand the theft operation to other technology companies, potentially affecting hundreds of jobs and millions in stolen intellectual property throughout Silicon Valley. The alcohol had destroyed Derek's judgment, but it had also provided complete confession of conspiracy that would send both men to federal prison. As restaurant security approached and other diners began leaving to avoid the escalating confrontation, I quietly excused myself to the restroom. The recording device had captured more than enough evidence to clear my name and destroy both of my tormentors, but I needed to extract myself from the situation before their mutual accusations turned violent. Helen Rodriguez intercepted me near the restaurant's back entrance, confirming that FBI agents were already moving to arrest both Brad and Derek, based on the recorded confessions and supporting evidence Sarah had provided. The sting operation had exceeded our most optimistic expectations, delivering complete vindication along with justice for everyone they had victimized. Walking through the alley behind the restaurant, I could hear sirens approaching from multiple directions as federal law enforcement converged on the scene. Within hours, the men who had tried to destroy my life would be in custody facing charges for conspiracy theft, money laundering, and fraud. The nightmare that began with my public humiliation was finally ending with their complete downfall. As I drove home through the night, my phone buzzed with a text message from Emma.
"Daddy's been arrested. Can I come home now, Mommy?"
The question I had been waiting weeks to answer finally had a simple, joyful response. "Yes, sweetheart. You can come home." Saturday morning brought the surreal experience of watching my vindication unfold on local news, while Emma and I shared pancakes at our kitchen table. The previous night's arrests had generated major coverage across Bay Area media, with reporters describing the FBI's investigation into what they called one of the largest intellectual property theft schemes in Silicon Valley history. The television coverage showed Brad Sullivan being led away in handcuffs, while federal agents seized computers, financial records, and storage devices from both his office and his luxury penthouse apartment. Derek's arrest outside the restaurant had been equally dramatic, with his drunken confession providing prosecutors with evidence that would make conviction virtually certain. Emma watched the news reports with the confused curiosity of a 7-year-old trying to understand why her father was being arrested while her mother was suddenly being described as a whistleblower whose courage exposed corporate crime. I explained as simply as possible that sometimes people make very bad choices that hurt others, and that consequences help ensure those bad choices don't continue. By noon, my phone was ringing constantly with calls from journalists, attorneys, former colleagues, and industry contacts who wanted to offer support or apologize for believing the lies that had temporarily destroyed my reputation. The speed with which public perception shifted was remarkable, demonstrating how quickly truth can triumph over deception when supported by overwhelming evidence. Katie Bennett was among the first to call, sobbing with relief that she would no longer face retaliation for telling the truth about Brad's criminal activities. The FBI had placed her under witness protection protocols, and Meridian's board of directors had issued a public apology for her forced participation in fabricating evidence against me. Victoria Jang had already offered Katie a position at Apex Dynamics, with a significant salary increase and guarantee of protection from future workplace retaliation. Marcus Williams received even better news. Victoria recognized his courage in exposing the conspiracy despite personal risk to his job security, hiring him as head of corporate security with responsibility for protecting employees who report unethical behavior or potential crimes. His daughter's college tuition would be covered through Apex's employee education benefits, fulfilling dreams he had worried might be impossible on a security guard's salary. The legal resolution moved with unprecedented speed once federal prosecutors reviewed the recorded confessions, financial evidence, and digital forensics Sarah had assembled. Derek immediately agreed to a plea bargain that reduced his sentence in exchange for providing additional evidence against Brad's criminal enterprise. His cooperation revealed the full scope of intellectual property theft, affecting multiple companies and dozens of technology workers whose innovations had been stolen and sold. Meridian's board of directors held an emergency meeting Sunday morning, resulting in a complete reversal of all charges against me, along with a public statement acknowledging that my termination had been based on false accusations orchestrated by their former CEO. The company offered a substantial financial settlement, along with restoration of my professional reputation, though I had already decided my future lay elsewhere. Monday brought the official announcement of my appointment as Chief Innovation Officer at Apex Dynamics, accompanied by industry publications running feature stories about my vindication and Brad's downfall. The contrast between Friday's humiliation and Monday's triumph felt almost impossible to process, but Emma's excitement about our new circumstances helped ground the experience in joyful reality. The most satisfying moment came when ConnectFlow's source code was legally transferred to Apex as part of the intellectual property restitution required by federal prosecutors. The algorithm I had developed under Patricia Holloway's mentorship would continue advancing enterprise software innovation, but now under leadership that valued integrity and employee contributions rather than exploitation and theft. Former Meridian clients began calling within days to express interest in working with me again, eager to continue relationships built over years of successful collaboration. Many had suspected something was wrong when Brad began making drastic changes to service agreements and pricing structures. But they hadn't understood the criminal motivations behind decisions that seemed merely incompetent. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected call from Patricia Holloway, now enjoying retirement in her vineyard in Sonoma County, but still maintaining industry connections through various board positions and advisory roles. Her voice carried warmth and satisfaction as she congratulated me on surviving the ordeal and exposing the corruption that had infected her former company.
"I need to confess something,"
Patricia said after we had discussed the legal resolution and media coverage.
"I suspected Brad's criminal intentions when he was negotiating the acquisition, but I couldn't prove anything concrete. I deliberately positioned you to eventually discover the truth because I knew your integrity would surface whatever corruption he brought to the company."
Patricia's revelation added another layer to the vindication. She had provided additional evidence to federal investigators that helped ensure Brad received the maximum prison sentence allowed under federal guidelines for his crimes. Her faith in my character had been validated by my refusal to accept injustice, even when fighting back seemed hopeless. The personal healing proved as important as the professional vindication. Derek's plea agreement included voluntary relinquishment of all custody claims as part of his cooperation with prosecutors, meaning Emma would remain with me permanently without the ongoing trauma of forced visits with her father during his incarceration. She began seeing a counselor to process the confusion and fear Derek's lies had created, but her natural resilience was already helping her adjust to our new reality. Wednesday evening, Emma proudly told her classmates during show and tell that her mother was a hero who catches bad guys and makes computers work better for everyone. The simplicity of her perspective helped me understand that surviving this ordeal had taught her valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, fighting for what's right, and trusting that truth eventually triumphs over deception. Victoria Jang hinted during our first official strategy meeting that even bigger opportunities awaited once I had fully settled into my new role. Apex was exploring partnerships with other technology companies to develop industry standards for protecting intellectual property and preventing the type of systematic theft Brad had orchestrated. My experience surviving corporate crime had positioned me to help protect other workers from similar victimization. As I tucked Emma into bed Thursday night, she asked whether Derek would ever be able to hurt us again. "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "He's going to spend a long time learning to make better choices, and we're going to be safe and happy while he does that." The question reminded me how completely our lives had been transformed in just 1 week, moving from fear and uncertainty to security and hope. Friday afternoon, I stood in my new corner office at Apex Dynamics, looking out over Silicon Valley and reflecting on the journey from public humiliation to complete vindication. The view included Meridian's building in the distance where new leadership was working to rebuild a company culture based on integrity rather than exploitation. Justice had been served, but more importantly, the future held unlimited potential for innovation and positive impact. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office at Apex Dynamics, watching the sunset paint the Silicon Valley skyline in brilliant shades of orange and gold. The floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view that included Meridian's headquarters in the distance where new leadership was working to restore the company culture Patricia Holloway had originally created. The contrast between my current position and the devastating humiliation of that Friday afternoon felt almost dreamlike in its completeness. Emma's artwork covered one wall of my office, colorful drawings that depicted our journey from darkness to light with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. Her latest masterpiece showed 2 figures labeled Mommy and Emma standing triumphantly on a mountain peak with storm clouds retreating in the background and sunshine breaking through to illuminate their path forward. The transformation at Apex had exceeded every expectation Victoria Jang and I had discussed during those initial conversations. My revolutionary approach to client management systems had revolutionized their entire product line, generating innovations that positioned the company as the undisputed leader in enterprise software solutions. The team I assembled included several former Meridian employees who chose to follow me, bringing their expertise and loyalty to an environment that genuinely valued their contributions. Katie Bennett had flourished in her new role as user experience designer, her creativity finally unleashed in a workplace that encouraged risk-taking and original thinking rather than fearful compliance with arbitrary demands. Marcus Williams had transformed Apex's security protocols, establishing systems that protected intellectual property while fostering the open collaboration essential for technological innovation. Their success stories reminded me that surviving workplace trauma often leads to opportunities for growth that wouldn't have existed otherwise. The legal resolution had concluded with Brad Sullivan receiving a 5-year federal sentence for corporate fraud, theft of trade secrets, and money laundering. Derek's cooperation with prosecutors had earned him a reduced sentence, but his reputation in the technology industry was permanently destroyed. Both men faced civil lawsuits from multiple victims whose intellectual property had been stolen, ensuring their financial ability to harm others was eliminated along with their freedom. More importantly, the case had generated industry-wide changes in how companies protect employee innovations and prevent the systematic theft that had characterized Brad's criminal enterprise. Professional associations had developed new standards for intellectual property protection, while federal agencies had enhanced enforcement mechanisms for investigating corporate crime in the technology sector. The personal victory proved even more meaningful than professional vindication. Emma thrived in our new life, proud of her mother's resilience and integrity rather than confused by lies about criminal behavior. She had learned valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, fighting for justice, and trusting that good people eventually triumph over those who choose to harm others. Her relationship with Derek would be rebuilt slowly over many years, but only after he demonstrated genuine commitment to becoming the father she deserved. My work at Apex had evolved beyond product development into mentorship and advocacy for other women facing workplace retaliation or discrimination. The nonprofit organization I established, called Innovation Defense, provided legal resources, counseling services, and career support for technology workers whose integrity made them targets for corporate criminals. Helen Rodriguez served as advisory board chair, bringing her FBI experience to help victims document evidence and coordinate with law enforcement when necessary. The program had already assisted more than 50 individuals whose situations ranged from patent theft to sexual harassment to financial fraud. Each successful resolution validated my belief that fighting back against injustice was not only possible, but necessary to protect others from similar victimization. The courage required to challenge powerful people became easier when supported by community resources and legal expertise. Victoria Jang had become more than a business partner. She had evolved into a trusted friend whose vision for ethical leadership extended far beyond quarterly profit reports. Our collaboration had generated innovations that improved working conditions for thousands of employees while advancing technological solutions that genuinely benefited society. The partnership proved that business success and moral integrity were complementary rather than competing values. The relationship with Patricia Holloway had deepened into a mentoring connection that honored her original investment in my potential while preparing me for even greater challenges ahead. She frequently visited our offices, sharing decades of wisdom about leadership innovation and maintaining ethical standards in industries that often prioritized short-term gains over sustainable growth. Last month, Patricia approached me with an opportunity that represented the logical next step in my professional evolution. She offered to invest in my independent venture, a startup focused on developing artificial intelligence systems that enhance human creativity rather than replacing human workers. The project would combine my technical expertise with my hard-earned understanding of how workplace dynamics affect innovation and employee satisfaction. The startup, tentatively named Synergy Systems, would develop AI tools specifically designed to augment human capabilities in creative and analytical work. Rather than automating jobs, the technology would provide workers with enhanced resources for problem-solving, pattern recognition, and strategic planning. The goal was to demonstrate that artificial intelligence could strengthen human potential rather than diminish employment opportunities. Emma had already volunteered to be our first beta tester, suggesting that AI systems should help kids learn math and science by making complex concepts more fun and accessible. Her enthusiasm for the project reminded me that the most meaningful innovations often emerge from simple desires to make life better for the people we care about most. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, my phone buzzed with a text message from Derek sent from the federal facility where he was serving his sentence. "Emma's birthday is next week. I know I can't be there, but I wanted you to know I'm proud of the mother you've become and the example you've set for our daughter. Thank you for fighting for what was right, even when it hurt all of us." The message represented genuine acknowledgement of responsibility that I had never expected to receive. Derek's incarceration had apparently provided time for reflection that led to understanding of how his choices had damaged everyone involved, including himself. The possibility of eventual reconciliation remained distant and uncertain, but his recognition of my integrity offered hope that healing was possible. Walking through the parking garage toward my car, I reflected on the lessons this experience had taught me about resilience, justice, and the power of community support in overcoming seemingly impossible challenges. The journey from public humiliation to professional triumph had required courage I didn't know I possessed, but it had also revealed strength that emerged from refusing to accept injustice. The most important realization was that my firing had actually been liberation from a toxic environment that never truly valued my contributions or respected my integrity. Brad's criminal operation would have eventually destroyed everyone associated with it, including innocent employees who deserved better leadership and ethical business practices. My termination had saved me from becoming complicit in crimes that violated everything I believed about professional responsibility. Fighting back with truth and evidence had proved more powerful than accepting defeat or seeking revenge through destructive means. The legal system supported by dedicated professionals like Helen Rodriguez and Victoria Zhang had provided justice that protected future victims while holding criminals accountable for their actions. The process had been difficult and frightening, but the outcome validated faith in institutions and processes designed to protect honest people from exploitation. As I drove home to Emma, who was waiting with homework questions and stories about her day at school, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this point. The challenges we had survived together had strengthened our relationship while teaching both of us that integrity and perseverance ultimately triumph over corruption and betrayal. The future stretched ahead with unlimited possibility, filled with opportunities to create positive change, while building the kind of life that reflects our deepest values and aspirations. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become catalysts for the best things we never imagined were possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight was for celebrating how far we had come and appreciating the community of friends and colleagues who had helped transform our darkest moment into the foundation for everything wonderful that followed. Before I close this story, I want to ask you something that's been on my mind. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for what's right felt impossible because of the personal cost it might require? How did you find the courage to do the right thing, even when it seemed like you were fighting alone against people with more power and resources? I hope my experience shows that integrity and determination can overcome even the most overwhelming challenges when supported by good people who believe in justice. Sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories, both for ourselves and for others who face similar struggles. Thank you for listening to my story and allowing me to share what I learned about resilience community and the power of refusing to accept injustice. I hope it encourages you to fight for what you believe in and reminds you that you're stronger than any challenge you might face. Please, like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity, share it with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves, and leave a comment about your own experiences with workplace challenges or personal triumph. Your stories inspire me and remind all of us that we're not alone in fighting for what's right. Keep believing in yourself and remember that the very qualities that make you a target can become your greatest strengths when you choose to fight back with truth and courage.